I'm not the kind of person who believes in haunted houses. I'm the kind of person who looks up the fuse box first, checks for mold, and then starts complaining about the realtor's photos not matching reality. If there's a weird noise, I assume it's a raccoon. If there's a cold spot, I assume it's bad insulation. You get the idea. So when I took the job house sitting for a week, I treated it like a paid vacation with a key code. My cousin Kayla set it up. She's one of those people with 12 side hustles and a joint calendar color-coded like a military operation. She said a client of hers needed someone to watch a property while their renovation permits got finalized. It's just out by the reservoir, she said, like that was nothing. 2 hours in the evening to check the heat, run the taps, scare off squatters, feed the cat. Cat? I said. Officially no cat, she said, making a face. But when you get there, you will find a cat. Its name is Goose. The owners never admitted to Goose, and I think it's because they aren't supposed to have pets yet for insurance reasons. But Goose exists. Goose eats. Goose screams if you forget the wet food. How long? I asked. 1 week, she said. Good money. My rent was due and my car needed brakes, so I said yes, punched the code into my phone, and figured I'd get some quiet time to edit photos and finally clean my inbox. The house sat on a piece of sloped land that used to be part of a camp or something. The GPS made me overshoot the driveway twice because the mailbox was missing and the number plate was half buried in last year's leaves. I will say this. The house had good bones. New roof. Fresh siding. The porch wrapped around like it was hugging itself. The windows were tall and kind of old-fashioned with those thin grids inside the glass that make you feel classy, even if you've got a Costco pizza in your passenger seat. I liked it immediately. I also immediately did not like the neighbor. He stood in his yard with a dog, a wiry gray thing with a black muzzle, and watched me pull in. He didn't wave. He had that stillness old people get when they've seen every story twice and aren't impressed by the third. The dog went alert the second my tires hit gravel, ears up, body tense, not barking, just staring. You know that feeling when you sense a teacher is about to call your name for a question you didn't study for? That's how the dog's stare felt. I parked, got out, gave the neighbor a friendly half-raise of my hand, and grabbed my backpack. Evening, the neighbor said finally. His voice was a pebble dropping in a well. Small, hard, and somehow it went far. You the new one? Just house-sitting, I said, for the week. I tried to sound like this arrangement was boring, normal, and not worth any attention. He squinted at me like I'd offered him a math problem. I'm Carl. If you hear the siren, don't go outside. I laughed because I thought it was neighbor humor, like don't feed the raccoons or don't leave your trash out. I waited for the smile that would tell me he was joking. It didn't come. Sirens, I said. He looked up toward the water, where the reservoir lay behind the tree line like a piece of dropped sky. You'll hear it if you hear it, he said, and tugged the dog's leash. The dog kept staring until the leash made it, reluctantly, look away. It's not for you. Okay, I said, because what else do you say? Thanks. He nodded once, like that finished a conversation we didn't have, and walked back toward his house. Inside, the air had the smell of fresh paint softened by dust. I found the thermostat and set it to 68, ran each faucet for a minute like Kayla told me, to keep the traps from drying out, and checked that the windows were locked. The old floor complained under my feet in a way that sounded friendly, like a grandparent's knees. Goose the cat materialized out of nowhere when I opened the pantry and yowled at the wet food like I'd just explained basic arithmetic to him, and he was offended. He was large, orange, and had the facial expression of a retired judge. "Okay, Goose," I said. "You were not in the contract, but I respect the hustle." By sundown, I'd done everything on my checklist and set up in the front room with my laptop. I moved a comfy chair so I could look out the window at the gravel driveway while I worked. When you're in a house that's technically someone else's dream, there's comfort in keeping your eyes on the way out. That first night was quiet. The moon was 2 days from full, and the light it made turned the yard into a pale negative of itself. The trees whispered because trees don't know how loud they are until everyone else in the room shuts up. Goose ate, and then vanished into a dimension only cats can access. I made tea and felt very adult, which is a rarer feeling than anyone prepares you for. Around midnight, I heard the intercom. At first, I thought it was a radio in a neighbor's garage. It crackled into existence like someone dragging a blanket over gravel. Then a voice said, "This is a routine test of the emergency alert system for the Millersfield Reservoir. Please stay in your homes." It wasn't the modern EAS tone, not that digital alarm we all know from weather broadcasts. It sounded older, like an old station ID had been resurrected. The speaker was tinny and slightly warped. I looked at my phone. No alerts. I checked the window. Carl's house was dark except for one upstairs room with a lamp burning like a little eye. The voice continued. "Siren will sound for 3 minutes. This is a test. All personnel please stand by." I couldn't place the direction. Sound out there bounces off the water in the hills, so it's like trying to pinpoint a mosquito in a gym. It seemed to come from the general direction of the dam, which was 2 miles away. The siren started. It was low and long, not super loud where I was, but it crawled into the house anyway, as if the walls couldn't help letting it in. After 3 minutes it died, the way you exhale when you're done trying not to sigh, and silence came back. Goose, wherever he was, did not care. Okay, I thought. Carl wasn't messing with me. Good to know. I went to sleep on the couch because I don't like sleeping in strangers' beds even when they have clean sheets. Around 3, I woke up to a feeling like a blanket lifting off me. Not a draft exactly. Just that sensation your skin gets when the air pressure changes. I sat up and listened. The house creaked. The fridge hummed. Outside, something stepped on gravel once, then again, then stopped. I lay back down and told myself not to be a movie character. I told myself I would not get up and walk into the dark like an idiot. I counted backward from 100. At 92, I fell asleep. In the morning, I found 3 wet spots on the front steps. Not puddles, not footprints from shoes. Spots like something had stood there dripping. It hadn't rained. There was nothing over the porch except roof, no old gutter to leak. The spots smelled faintly like fish. "Goose," I said, even though I knew the cat wasn't responsible. Goose emerged from somewhere and meowed in a tone that said he refused to be implicated in whatever weirdness I was suggesting. He ate breakfast and then stared at the door like it owed him money. I was there to do a job, and the job list didn't include solving mysteries. I got through my morning routine, sent proofs to a client, and made a note to ask Kayla about the siren. When she called me at lunch, I mentioned it. "Yeah," she said. The emergency spillway has something that triggers random tests. It's old. They should probably replace it. But it's Millersfield. They barely fix potholes. Don't go swimming, basically. It was midnight, I said. Random, she said. Oh, by the way, the dumpster company is going to drop a bin in the driveway tomorrow, so you might want to park at the top of the slope tonight. I said okay, and we chatted about nothing. Before we hung up, she said, if Carl says anything weird, don't take it personally. He's, what's the word? Eccentric. He used to work for the water authority, and he thinks he still does. What about the cat? I asked. What cat? She said, deadpan, and hung up. The second night, the siren didn't sound. I watched some dumb show where everyone on screen had better hair than me, and I felt human again. I even slept in the upstairs guest bedroom. The mattress was one of those memory foam things that swallows your judgment whole. At 2:17 a.m., a noise pulled me out of sleep so completely, I sat upright before my eyes knew they were open. It was the sound of the house agreeing with something. I know that makes no sense. The closest I can come is this. Sometimes you watch two strangers at a bar nod at each other, even though you have no idea what was communicated. That nod has a sound. It's tiny, wood settling, a door frame inhaling, but it's a consensus noise. The house made that sound. Then the intercom blared. This is a warning for properties adjacent to the Millersfield Reservoir. This is not a test. Stay off the roads. Do not look at the water. Personnel, check your lights. My phone remained unhelpful. No alerts. The bedroom felt colder than it should have given the thermostat. I went to the window and looked out. The moon was full now and everything had edges. Across the yard, on the gravel of my driveway, I saw a person. They were facing the house, about 10 feet from the bottom step. They weren't moving. I couldn't tell if they were a man or woman because they wore a hood, and the hood cast a shadow the moon couldn't cut. Their hands hung at their sides. Beside them, at ankle height, something shifted like a shadow that had decided to stretch in a different direction. I did what you'd do. I stepped back and killed the lamp. I told myself to go downstairs and call out. Or not call out. I told myself 1,000 versions of bravery, and none of them moved my legs. I stood there, counting my heartbeat like a metronome stuck in molasses. After a minute, the figure turned and walked away. Not down the driveway, not toward the road. They walked into the trees on the side yard, toward the reservoir. I exhaled. That exhale told me how long I'd been holding my breath. I didn't sleep much after that. The cat found me at some point and kneaded my hip with his serial killer paws until I pushed him away. In the morning, I found fresh spots on the front steps. Not wet this time. Gritty. Gray. Around them, a faint ring, like condensation from something cold. I wiped one with tissue. It left streaks that smelled like raw lake. I didn't want to think in metaphors, but my brain went there anyway. The rings looked like the house had been sweating. Carl was in his yard when I went to get the mail that didn't technically belong to me. The dog watched me like last night was a story it wasn't ready to tell. Did you hear anything last night? I asked, walking along the road like I had errands to justify being outside. Carl nodded. First one this season. Siren? He made a face. That's just a coat they put on it. Like calling a tornado an event so people can feel like it's on the schedule. Okay, I said. Did you see someone on my driveway? His eyes went to the gravel as if he could read last night's footprints like a book. Yes. Who? He looked up. No, he said, and I understood he wasn't refusing to tell me. He was answering the question I should have asked. What's the deal? I said. Because I'm just here for the week, and I'd like to not accidentally die in someone else's mortgage problem. The dog chuffed once, like a cough dressed up as commentary. Carl rubbed its neck. You'll get the handout, he said. What handout? He nodded toward the house. Check the pantry. Back inside I did, because my life apparently needed more riddles. Behind the stack of paper towels, under a plastic bin full of those reusable grocery bags everyone owns and nobody washes, there was a yellowed packet clipped together. The cover sheet was crisp and official looking, in that way small-town governments accomplish, by finding the Arial font and absolutely hammering it. It read, Millersfield Reservoir, Adjacent Property Occupant Guidelines. And then, in smaller type, for seasonal phenomena, do not distribute. Updated 1989. I laughed out loud and then stopped because the sound felt like it woke something up. I sat at the kitchen table and read. Most of it was nonsense. It used phrases like liminal seepage and intercoastal auditory induction, which I think were meant to sound science-y and ended up sounding like someone photocopied a thesaurus. But there were bullet points too, and those were plain as day. If siren sounds between 12:01 a.m. and 3:33 a.m., remain indoors. It is not for you. Do not stand in a doorway facing the reservoir during soundings. Do not count the interval between sound cycles out loud. Do not maintain direct visual contact with reflective surfaces during soundings. Water, mirrors, windows. If you perceive an individual in the yard, do not acknowledge. They are not asking for help from you. If you perceive an individual you recognize, do not acknowledge. They are not asking for help from you. If you lose time between cycles, do not panic. Drink a glass of milk and write down the last thing you remember. Place note under the phone. If you find footprints on the porch, sweep them away toward the road, not the door. Do not discuss this packet with anyone over the telephone. Personnel, check your lights. In the back, there was a map of the reservoir and a short paragraph about the dam being built over an older structure, with the most passive-aggressive sentence I've ever seen in a government pamphlet. Previous agreements between parties are considered fulfilled to the extent that the parties are already fulfilled. The cat jumped on the table and sat on the packet like it was his job. He gave me that slow blink cats produce when they want to know if you've cracked yet. Goose, I said. This is dumb. He looked at me with perfect innocence, as if to say, you're the one reading a packet from 1989 like it explains the weather. That night, I put the packet under the phone because the packet told me to, and I couldn't help myself. I pulled the upstairs bed against the far wall so the headboard touched more than one corner, and I put my boots by the door and my coat on the chair, like I was making myself a map in case the power went out. I'm not sure why that made me feel safer. Maybe because when you're scared, a blueprint is the same as a shield. Around 1:15 a.m., the intercom woke up again. This is a warning for properties adjacent to the Millersfield Reservoir. The siren will sound for 3 minutes. Do not count out loud. I had the idiot thought. I wasn't going to count out loud. Who would? And in the silence before the siren, some reflex in me started counting inside my head, because the brain is a toddler with a marker. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. The siren swallowed the numbers. It wasn't as loud as it should have been in the house, but it found all the cavities in me and hummed there. That's what I realized later. It didn't just exist outside. It existed in my teeth, my lungs, that little pointless pocket of air behind your sternum that only hurts when you've cried too hard. It vibrated the glass in the picture frames and made the water in the toilet bowl dimple. I didn't go to the window. I stood in the hallway where I couldn't see anything reflective. I breathed. I thought about milk because the packet had said milk like it was a magic spell, and I clung to that like a kid to a nightlight. When the siren stopped, the house sighed. I heard a single step on gravel outside, and then nothing. Goose hissed somewhere and bolted, claws skittering, like someone had pressurized the cat and then let him go. It went like that for 2 more nights. Siren, steps, the feeling of the house listening to something other than me. On the 4th night, 2 things happened. First, the dumpster arrived. I moved my car up the slope like Kayla told me, and spent the late afternoon sweating into a hoodie, while a guy with forearms like rocking chairs put a metal bin in the driveway with surgical precision. "You hearing about the ferry?" he asked while he lowered it. "What ferry?" I said. He looked at me like I had admitted to not knowing what a tree was. "The old ferry road. They're saying it's showing again in the mud." "Oh," I said, like that meant anything to me. "Cool?" He made the face people make when they decide you're not from around here and therefore harmless. "Watch for kids," he said, jerking his chin at the reservoir. "They'll go out there with those LED fishing lures and try to make TikToks about ghosts." "I'll keep an eye out," I said, which is the kind of thing you say when you're paid to keep an eye out, and also you have no idea what you're promising. Second, around 2:17 a.m., the intercom crackled and said my name. It said it wrong the first time. A mispronunciation I get a lot. My last name clipped, the middle vowel flattened. Then, again, correct, in a voice that was mine in 10 years if I had a cold. "This is for you," my voice said. I'd like to tell you I screamed. I'd like to tell you I did something cinematic. What I did was this. I sat down on the floor like my legs had decided they'd carried me enough for one lifetime. The intercom hissed with that whispery static old tapes have. The house made the consensus noise again, like it had taken a vote and decided something without me. "Check your lights," my voice said. "Goose, get down." The siren started. It didn't feel like a siren anymore. It felt like when someone says your name in a crowded room and your head snaps around by itself. I stood. I checked the lights. That was not on my job list when I was born, but the packet had mentioned it, and the voice had said it, and my spine apparently works for facilities now. The kitchen light flickered once, and then held. The hall light stayed steady. The upstairs lamp, the one I kept on because shadow is a power I prefer not to pay utilities for, pulsed twice. At the top of the stairs, outside the guest room, Goose stood with his back arched, fur up like a bad hair day, eyes space wide. He hissed when I came near, but not at me, at the room. I looked in. There was a woman sitting on the bed, or a shape that wore the outline of a woman. She was the exact color of the moonlight finding its way through curtains. not glowing, not transparent. Just there, and the air around her heavy like it gets before rain. She walked her fingers over the duvet, the way kids drum their nails on the table when asked to wait. She wore something that might have been a dress or a nightgown from a decade with smaller waistlines. She looked at me, and we did that thing humans do, where two realities check their reflection in each other. I opened my mouth and shut it again. She tilted her head. Then she lifted one hand and tapped the bed beside her like you'd do if you wanted the cat to jump up. Goose yowled like a fire alarm. I didn't move. I don't know how long we stared at each other because time had stopped being a number and become a texture. Eventually, the siren ended. The intercom said, "Personnel stand by," in a bored tone like a teenager reading a menu, and the weight in the air blew out like a candle. The woman's outline stuttered and then smoothed, and then she was gone. The house made one last agreement noise. I stayed in the hallway until my legs started to ache. The next morning, I put coffee in me like it was a spell against stupidity and marched over to Carl's. The dog met me at the property line with the polite intensity of a bouncer who's happy to deny you entry. Carl called it off and gestured me onto the porch like a king allowing a petition. "Tell me," he said before I could tell him anything. "Your intercom talked," I said. "It said my name. Then there was a woman in the guest room. And I know how crazy that sounds because I'm hearing it out loud." Carl nodded like I'd confirmed a weather report. "You got the good room." "I don't want the good room," I said. "I want to finish this week with my brain inside my head the way I brought it." He laughed. It was small and warm, like a match struck in a dark shed. "You will," he said, "unless you go to the water." "I'm not going to the water." His eyes paused on my face in a way that made me feel like I'd said a line other people said, and he'd learned affection for them anyway. "They don't like being looked at," he said. "Who?" "The ones who were here before," he said, and I realized that in his head, before had a capital letter. I waited. "You ever been to the old ferry road when the drought hits?" he asked. "No," I said. "Looks like a wet scar," he said. "Folks go out and walk it when the water's low. It's a trick. Road looks solid until it decides it isn't. People step off where it used to be flat, and that's the last thing anyone sees of them." "There are signs?" I asked, hearing how small the question sounded. He nodded. "People read signs like they read contracts," he said. "They glance at the parts that make them feel better." "Who was the woman?" I asked quietly. He picked something out of his teeth with his thumbnail and flicked it into the yard. "Sometimes they knock," he said. "Sometimes they sit. Sometimes they stand at the bottom of the steps and drip." He looked up at me. "Don't sweep it toward the house." "I read the packet," I said. He smiled. It did not reach his eyes because his eyes had voted and decided not to make public statements anymore. "Then you're ahead of last year's," he said. "Last year's what?" "House watcher," he said. "Boy with a tattoo on his throat he kept touching when he lied." "What happened to him?" I asked. Carl shrugged. "He looked," he said. "I went back to the house and tried to decide if I was the kind of person who would leave early and lose money. I am. I definitely am. I even put my laptop back in my backpack and stood in the kitchen with my keys in my hand. Then Goose walked in and sat on my shoe. It was a dumb thing. Cats sit on things because that's their job. Surfaces are challenges, and challenges must be met with but it felt like he was physically pinning me to the present. I belonged to this moment long enough to feed him dinner and take one more night and make a plan in the morning like an adult. I put my keys down. I told myself I would not go to the water. Around 10 that night, I opened the packet again. On the last page, in handwriting that didn't match the typewritten sections, someone had added a note. If you hear your own voice, do not answer. If you hear your own voice say, "Come here," do not come here. I laughed at the weird phrasing. My brain didn't. The intercom came alive at 2:03 a.m. "This is a warning for properties adjacent to the Millersfield Reservoir," it said. "Personnel, check your lights." I checked them. The motion sensor over the back door flickered on and off in a steady pulse. I turned it off at the switch, and the intercom crackled again. "That's not the one," it said, and the voice was mine, and it sounded annoyed the way I get annoyed with myself when I can't find my glasses and they're on my head. "Okay," I said out loud like an idiot, and then clapped a hand over my mouth because the packet's rule about not acknowledging wasn't just a line. My voice from the intercom laughed once, a sound like someone sliding a knife off a plate. "Check the one in the hall." I didn't move. The siren started and my heartbeat tried to match it, which is a terrible rhythm for a person to have. The hall light buzzed, not flickering, buzzing. I stared at it until my eyes teared up and my vision turned into a broken kaleidoscope. I didn't know what I was supposed to be checking for, and maybe that was the point. The buzzing got louder. Somewhere in the walls, something ticked lightly, not like a pipe cooling, not like a house settling, like counting. "Okay," my voice said through the intercom, and I knew with that weird absolute certainty people only have in dreams, that whoever was speaking had taken a step closer to me without moving their feet. "Okay," I said again, but inside, and I packed my body around the word like I was keeping a flame alive. "Open the door," my voice said. The siren wailed and dropped and rose. Goose started that awful low yowl cats do before they fight something they can't beat. He walked sideways toward the front door, back arched to maximum, hair so puffed he looked electrified. He stared at the doorknob with an intensity that made my own skin crawl. Through the peephole I saw my own face looking back at me. Not literally. There was a reflection, because peepholes are tiny fisheye mirrors if the light falls right, and I knew what I was seeing. But for a second the world blurred around the edges, and I couldn't tell if my face was inside my head or outside. The intercom popped. "I'm cold," my voice said, in a tone I knew too well, the one I use when I want someone to believe I'm fine, and I need help anyway. I put my back against the door and slid down it to the floor. My butt hit the mat. The mat said, "Welcome," in a font that didn't believe itself. The siren cut off. The house inhaled. From the porch, a voice said my name in a way nobody says it, because nobody knows my childhood nickname, and anyway I haven't used it since I was 12. I know it sounds dramatic, but I could feel it pushing against the wood through my spine, the way sound pushes on air, and air pushes on muscle, and muscle pushes on bone. "Don't," I said to myself, and I turned my head and looked at the milk jug on the counter like an idiot. I went to get it and drank a swallow out of the jug, because I am disgusting when I'm scared. It did not magically fix my brain, but it turned my mouth into something that wasn't a soft place to put lures. The porch voice stopped. The intercom ticked once, and then went dead. I slept in hour shards until daylight. I have never loved a morning so much in my life. Morning felt like the only adult in the room. When I went out to get the mail I had no reason to get, there were wet spots again on the top step. They didn't evaporate when the sun hit. They just sat there and smelled like old pennies. Carl waved me over and held up something like a trophy. It was a Polaroid. "You dropped this?" he said, knowing I hadn't. The photo had that cream border and the slightly underexposed quality that makes old pictures look like memories of a memory. It showed the front of my house, the porch, the welcome mat, the two windows on either side of the door, and me, asleep on the floor against the door, head tipped to one side, mouth slightly open, the picture of someone who has given up on sleep in exchange for the idea of it. The date written at the bottom in blue pen was tonight's date. "Carl," I said, and had to stop because my throat had closed up like it was tired of passing air. "Did you take this?" "No," he said, and his face did a thing it hadn't done yet, opened in concern. "Where was it?" I asked. "Came through my mail slot," he said. "Like bills. I don't get bills in the night." For a second, I thought about packing my backpack, feeding Goose 6 cans of wet food like a Viking burial, and driving away. I really did. But the thing about a story is, once you know you're in one, leaving feels like stopping a song in the middle of a breath. You can, but you'll hum it for the rest of your life whether you want to or not. Also, and this part is embarrassing, I wanted to prove I wasn't someone last year's house watcher would have laughed at. So I stayed. That afternoon, I drove into town for more milk, like I was stocking up for a snowstorm. Only in my case, the snowstorm was a siren with my voice in it. The girl at the register told me the reservoir was low, and the old ferry road was crazy visible, and people were getting stuck because the mud under the surface wasn't like regular mud. It was resinous, she said, like she'd just learned the word and wanted to see it outside its jar. "Don't go out there," she said, and then rolled her eyes at herself, like she knew she was performing the same line locals always perform for outsiders. "They say when the water goes down, the things that live under it remember their addresses." "I'm not from around here," I said. Like that explained the part of me that wanted to see it so badly my teeth ached. "Don't go out there," she said again, softer. I went back to the house, placed the milk in the fridge like a talisman on an altar, and tried to take a nap. I kept thinking I heard the house breathe with someone else's lungs. When I closed my eyes, I saw my own face through the peephole. And here is the part I don't want to write down, but I promised myself I'd be honest. A small, nasty piece of me wanted to open the door and ask my other self what she wanted so badly she had to learn to talk through wires. At 1:59 a.m., the intercom woke and the air in the house went thinner. "This is a warning for properties adjacent to the Miller's Field Reservoir," it said in the official voice. "Personnel, check your lights." Then, "Hey," my voice said, like calling to a friend across a crowded room. I stood at the end of the hallway and did not move. "It's me," my voice said. "I know this is weird, but I need you to do something." I stared at the packet on the phone table like a prayer wheel. "Do not answer. Do not answer." Do not answer. Come here, the voice said. I swallowed my response like it was a pebble that could grind me down from the inside if I let it. The siren started. The house buzzed like a fluorescent tube warming up. The downstairs bathroom door creaked one slow inch open. Goose was under the couch, silent as a judgment, 2 green coins in the dark. I need you to look, my voice said, very soft. It won't hurt if you don't step off the road. The siren rose. Somewhere outside, 3 steps crunched on gravel. My legs decided they were not in charge anymore and carried me to the window next to the door, the one with the nice grid in the glass. I cupped my hands around my face to block the reflection and looked out at the porch. My own back stared up at me from the mat. I know that's not how backs work, but there it was. My posture, my hair, the stupid threadbare hoodie I love like an old joke. She was leaning against the door, head tipped back against the wood, looking up at where I stood, but her eyes were the milky color of water reflecting a cloudy sky. It was me, and it wasn't. She tilted her head. I tilted mine. In the glass, a second me did not tilt because the brain only splits attention so many ways before it starts to shed details like old bark. Okay, I whispered to myself, not to her, and the intercom snapped like a match. If you're going to do it now, my voice said. The road is showing. I don't remember deciding. I remember my hand on the doorknob and the horrible smoothness of it under my palm like glass. I remember my boots finding the porch because the porch has always been there, because porches are for crossing, and sometimes the only way to keep a line intact is to walk it. I remember the air feeling wrong, thin at the top and heavy at the bottom like a lake turned upside down. I stepped onto the gravel and looked up. The sky was a bowl. The moon hung on its rim. The siren pushed and then paused like it was waiting to see what I would do with the space. I walked to the edge of the yard. The reservoir sat below the house like an idea that turned into a problem. The trees made a frame around it because that's what trees do when they like a story. And there, cutting across the mud like a scar, was a darker line. The old ferry road. It looked solid in the way puddles look solid before they laugh at you. A path led down from the house through the trees, a soft slope with leaf litter and little stones, and the moon made it into a ribbon. At the bottom, the mud shone where water hugged its edges. I could smell it. Old, sweet, wrong. The road was only about 5 or 6 feet wide. Past it, the reservoir spread to the dam like a sheet pinned by its corners. I stopped at the high ground, and my boots sank an inch, as if the earth wanted to wrap itself around my ankles. Don't step off, my voice said through the intercom back at the house, but it did not sound helpful. It sounded greedy. Across the water I saw lights. Not town lights, not car lights. The kind of lights you get on docks people leave on a timer because it makes them feel like the dark won't come in if the porch is polite enough. They flickered once and then steadied. I took 1 step onto the ferry road. It held. I took another. Something in the mud to my left burbled, like a pot warning you the boil is coming. The siren resumed with a little hiccup, as if shocked I hadn't made the mistake people make. The road under me was slick and somehow dry at the same time. My boots left no prints. I walked to the middle and stopped because all the menace in the world is centrifugal and wants you to stand where the spin is. The water hummed. The intercom in the house hissed. The lights across the reservoir went out and came on again in a different pattern, as if someone had breathed them. The surface of the water to my right bulged. That's the only word for it. Like something underneath rolled over. I looked up at the house. In the upstairs guest room window, a woman stood. The moon made her into a sharpened shadow. She lifted a hand and tapped the glass exactly where she'd tapped the bed. Come sit. Come look. I turned my head back toward the reservoir and saw myself standing on the road, farther ahead than I'd walked. She had her hands in the pockets of the hoodie. Her head was tilted like mine tilts when I'm listening to an audiobook while pretending I'm not. Her hair moved in the even breeze from a night that no longer touched me. She looked back at me and smiled a little. Don't, I said to me. And she shook her head like I'd told a joke, and we were both proud of me. Everything in me wanted to take one more step. It felt like if I didn't, I would have to spend the rest of my life not stepping, and that was worse than any pain. That's how they get you, I think. The feeling that the action is the only way to relieve an itch they invented. On the shore, somewhere behind me, a dog barked once, a single sharp note. I turned my head. In the pivot, the road under me slicked like it had been dry a second ago, and now it remembered it was mud. My boot slid half an inch. Half an inch is enough to turn your heart into an object you want to hold in your hands, just so you know where it is. I took a step back. The mud creaked. The intercom said my name in the tone my mother used when I was little, and she wanted me to come to the table, and the table held something I didn't want to eat. The woman in the window tapped the glass again. I could see the smear her fingertip left. A crescent moon. Okay, I said, and this time I meant it as a full sentence, and I stepped onto the leaf litter of the high ground and climbed back up the path without looking right or left. On the porch, my other me stood with her cheek pressed against the wood of the door, like she was listening to the grain. She took her face away when I approached, and now I could see it clearly. It was my face, down to the stupid pimple I had last week, and the little line between my eyebrows I pretend is thoughtful, and not just my face plotting against me. Her eyes were water, not the color, the content. I could see the moon rippling in them. She smiled at me. Her teeth were wrong, too many in front, like a fish if a fish didn't understand architecture. Almost, she said, and her voice wasn't mine anymore. It was deeper and wider and had the elements in it. The hiss of steam, the hum of wires, the scrape of gravel, the slap of water in a basin. Goose streaked out from under the couch and launched himself at the door. He hit with a sound that made my ribs ache in sympathy. The other me hissed, literally hissed, and for a second her face slid wrong like it was trying to decide which human expression would get the job done. I opened the door. It wasn't bravado. It was math. Inside was mine. Outside was theirs. The threshold was a line someone had drawn a long time ago, and I know what to do with lines. I stepped back. She stepped forward. Her hand reached like algae does, remembering how to be fingers. I swung the door without warning. It caught her wrist. If a wrist made of water can be caught. There was a sound like a sail snapping in wind, and a spray of droplets slammed across the floor and evaporated so fast they left a salt trace. The part of me that was not brave said, Jesus, you just made it mad. The intercom shrieked with static and then died. The house made the consensus noise like it had voted, and the results were, this is over now. I don't know what they want beyond company, Maybe that's the whole thing. Maybe water wants to be looked at, and doors want to be open, and roads want to be walked. Maybe that's all any of us ever want. But I went to the kitchen, got the broom, and swept the wet toward the road like the packet told me. I know theater when I see it. The show wanted me to sweep it toward the house. I didn't. At dawn, there was a new Polaroid in my mailbox. It showed the upstairs guest room, the bed, the smear on the glass where the woman had tapped. In the corner of the photo, someone's finger intruded, like they didn't know how to hold a camera. The date said tomorrow. I put it in the packet and closed the packet and put the packet under the phone. Kayla called around 10 and asked if everything was okay, because the remodel contractor wanted to bring samples by, and the dumpster guy had said I'd gone down to the road, which made it sound like I'd done drugs in a church parking lot. I said I'd had a weird night, and could tomorrow be better for samples. She asked if it was the siren. I said it was the water, and we both pretended that meant the same thing. "You done after tonight?" she said. "I'll be there at 9 with the next house sitter. Girl named Hattie. She's cool. Ex-military. You'll like her." "Don't bring her," I said before I could stop myself. There was a pause on the line. "You okay?" "Just don't bring her," I said. "Bring anyone else." "You're freaking me out a little," she said, but she said it in that light voice people use when they don't want to make a big deal out of the fact that they are in fact freaked out. "Okay, I'll reschedule." That night, the intercom stayed quiet until 3:30. I know because I stared at the stove clock like it was the last honest thing in the world. At 3:31 it crackled and hissed and said, in my voice pretending to be calm, "We can do this without rules if you want." I unplugged it from the wall. That felt like a line too. That felt like someone peeling off a uniform and throwing it into a chair and saying, "If the costume was keeping you from recognizing me, maybe recognize me now." The house did not agree or disagree. It held itself like a person who has learned their lessons and is trying not to add electives. Around 4, with the sky thinking about being gray, I fell asleep on the couch and had the kind of dream where you can't move. In the dream, the front door opened by itself. In the dream, the smell of the reservoir was in the living room, which is not where lakes belong. In the dream, a hand touched my hair and petted me the way you'd pet an animal you're not sure is tame. I woke up with my heart working too hard. The door was shut. The welcome mat was crooked by a half-inch I wouldn't have noticed before. Goose sat on my chest like a saint who had chosen the most inconvenient possible time for sainthood. His pupils were huge. His tail was a broom. He stared at the door. I couldn't get him to look away. It wasn't until I moved my head that he broke his gaze to bite my nose in a way that hurt enough to be reassuring. Biting is real. Biting is not a ghost. At 8, I packed. I cleaned the counters because fear turns me into a neat freak. I left a note for the owners that said nothing true and everything useful. Heat set to 68. All windows locked. Ran taps. Goose likes the salmon. Then I locked the door and sat on the top step with my backpack and waited for Kayla, because I didn't trust the inside or the outside, and the step felt like Switzerland. Carl came across the road with the dog and a thermos. He poured me coffee without asking. It tasted like it had been boiled in a metal pot, which is to say it tasted like mornings in cabins where you are dirty and happy. The dog put its head on my knee. I scratched behind its ears and felt it decide I was worth the work of liking. You didn't look, Carl said. I looked, I said. I just didn't step off. Good, he said. That's the whole thing, some years. Some years, I said. He shrugged. Some years it's the windows, he said. Some years it's the road. Some years it's the basement at the old museum. That one took 3. They usually bring them back in winter when the ice makes it honest. Kayla's car pulled up. She rolled down the window and made a face at the dog, who wagged like a man being told a joke he didn't get but appreciated. She took one look at me and said, "So we're not doing the samples today." "We're not doing the samples," I said. She got out and hugged me. She smelled like expensive shampoo in the city. "You look like you crawled out of a folklore book," she said, half laughing, half not. "I have a Polaroid of tomorrow," I said, into her shoulder. She pulled back and looked at my face. "Don't do that," she said. "I'm not," I said. "I swear I'm not." I showed her the packet. I showed her the extra page with the handwriting. I showed her the picture of me asleep against the door with last night's date, and the one of the upstairs window with tomorrow's. She flipped them over like there might be an explanation on the back, like a price tag. There wasn't. There never is. "Take them," I said. "Burn them or keep them or throw them in the lake, I don't care. I just don't want to be the one making choices about them." She tucked them inside the packet like a priest putting away a relic. "Okay," she said. "Okay." I said goodbye to Carl and the dog. Carl winked at me like we were both in on a joke and also trapped in it. I got in the car. As we pulled away, Goose appeared in the front window like a piece of orange punctuation and tapped the glass with his paw, exactly where the woman had. Kayla waved at him like he was a neighbor in a sitcom. The cat's eyes followed us to the end of the drive. We hit the road. At the curve where you can see the reservoir through the trees, the water looked like nothing had ever happened to it. That's how water is. It is a liar who tells the truth all the time. "Do you want to talk about it?" Kayla asked, when we were far enough away that my shoulders stopped living up under my ears. "Not yet," I said. "Maybe not ever." She nodded. "You got a week off," she said. "I'll cover you. Don't go near the water." We laughed because we both knew we were trying to put normalcy in a place that repels it. That should be the end. It isn't, of course, because endings are for stories. And this is just something that happened and keeps happening whenever the water gets low, and the road remembers how to be a road. I still have the bite mark on my nose. It healed into a tiny white crescent if I look in the right light. Sometimes in the middle of the night, when the city is quiet and the radiator knocks like a polite ghost, I hear the intercom crackle in my head. It's not real, obviously, except the voice that says, "Check your lights," is mine, and it's older. And every time I hear it, I get out of bed and walk around the apartment touching lamps like they're talismans. One of them always flickers once like an acknowledgement. I saw Carl once more at the grocery store in town when I drove out to give Kayla her charger she forgot at my place on purpose, so I'd have to visit. He didn't say hello. He just lifted his chin a fraction as we passed. The dog wasn't with him. The aisle smelled like lemons because life is rude like that. As he went by, he said, just loud enough for me to hear, "They don't like mirrors, but they learned windows." I nodded like that helped. It didn't. Last week I was scrolling and a video popped up of kids out by the old ferry road in the moonlight, showing off their lights and their bravery. It looked fake in that way the realest stuff does. The comments were full of local warnings and outsider jokes. Someone wrote, "Don't count," and half the replies were, "LOL, count what?" I turned off my phone and put it face down on the table and stared at it like it might get up and walk to the door. It stayed a phone, which I appreciated. I think about the person last year with the throat tattoo. I think about Hattie, who didn't get that gig because I asked my cousin not to bring her. I think about the Polaroids and the date on the bottom, and the fact that tomorrow is always a problem because you can write it down, and then it changes its clothes. I think about how easily my feet found the path to the water, because the ground loves to teach muscle memory. I haven't been back to the house. I won't. Someone else will watch it this year when the renovation finally gets done, and the siding makes it look like a picture in a brochure. They'll sit on the porch steps and drink coffee and think they're getting away with something. They'll hear the intercom and think it's quaint. They'll read the packet and laugh and then put it under the phone like I did. Because when a story asks you to do something simple, you always do it. If you take anything from this, take this. If something that sounds like you tells you to come here, stay where you are. If a road appears only when the water is low, let it miss you. If someone stands at the bottom of your steps and drips, sweep toward the street. Don't count. Don't answer. Don't be the echo they need. Oh, and feed the cat. Goose is innocent. Goose is a saint with knives for feet, and he will save your life and then pretend he meant to bite you the whole time. That's how he is. That's how we all are if we're lucky. We hurt each other only at the exact right moment and by accident. I'm telling you this like your best friend, because it matters in that dumb tiny way. Nothing and everything matters. Because we are all thresholds, and thresholds are where the interesting stuff happens and the dangerous stuff waits. Because one night soon, there will be a siren where you are, and your phone won't say a thing, and the window will reflect your face in a way that makes you want to correct it. When that happens, do me a favor. Check your lights, then leave them on.